So just a few announcements. The next talk is on April the 18th on the spiritual power of music. Just wait for a few people to come in. But I wanted to say from the outset that some of you might think you don't dream. And there'll be others who say, well, you know, I dream, but I didn't remember what I dreamed. But I think what I'm going to say today applies to the daytime as much as to the nighttime. I think you have to remember that sometimes you get downloads in the day when you're in a relaxation state. Say you've done some yoga, or you're walking on the beach, or you're in a light meditative state. You might get an answer to something and say, wow, you know, isn't that interesting? I just had the answer to the question that I thought I was struggling with. Alternatively, you might even have an insight that's completely new. So whatever I'm going to talk about today has just as much to do with daytime as it does have to do with nighttime. But obviously nighttime is an easier time for them to come through. So this is a practical suggestion talk to try and help everybody connect with their spirit guides. We've all got guides, and you've got to ask to receive, so that in reality, if you don't ask, they're not going to come back. And if you don't have some sort of practice, it's not going to happen either. So we'll start off with just the different paradigms and what we're going to be talking about. Essentially, we'll talk about other paradigms which are very valid. Scripted, official, informative dreams. I remember Sangoma saying to me, there are two kinds of dreams, instructional and non-instructional. And that's what we want to need. You don't have to be an expert or read a book on dreams or have a PhD to understand scripted dreams. I remember Mary Ellen Kelly, who's now passed, who's responsible for a lot of these sayings that the ancestors have given us, that she's downloaded, used to say, dreams are much too important to be relegated to experts. That's why I'm going to ask you to talk about them, because she used to run the Omega program. So we're going to talk about the difference between a visit and a dream, the cosmology of the spirit world and universals. Remember, the ancestors are interested in universals. They don't want to have a stamp of Buddhism or Christianity or anything else on them. They are coming from an array of spiritual traditions that are all the same. We'll talk about the pitfalls, tricksters, and pollution of dreams, and the fact that it's very much like the internet, or like the cybernet, if you like. I remember way back when I was asked to give a talk to the Jungian conference in Cape Town, and the dream I got the night I started to prepare the talk was talk about it like it's a computer, because I thought, how am I going to talk to these Jungians? They know so much more about dreams than I do. The only thing I've gotten from the dreams is what I've gotten from the ancestors or from my Sangoma teachers, who are very good dream interpreters, but it comes to these kind of dreams. I barely ever read a book on dreams, and they can confuse you, the books, because everybody's going to have different dreams. So we're going to talk about a classification that I use that might help you sort of pass your dreams, interpretation and the actualization of dreams, how important this interpretation is, and some other tips along the way. So really there are a number of different paradigms. The one I'm going to be talking about is the shamanic one. I think most shamans would agree with most of what I'm saying. But of course there's the subconscious, the unconscious, the psychological. There's the Jungian. Jung was really, I think, a shaman. He was, Freud was terrified he was going to discredit the profession. So because of that, I think Jung developed all these weird words like archetypal world and collective unconscious, when really he could have just said spirit guides, but he couldn't because he would have been discredited. And then of course there's the yogic Tibetan Buddhist dreaming, where there's more to do with connecting with the causal realm, enlightened spirits, which is a bit different. Most of us are not going to be able to connect with these. Those of you who can lucid dream, anybody here who's a lucid dreamer? Lucky. Well, they can practice for the afterlife, because the lucid dreaming is a way of showing how you will navigate the afterlife. But we're going to focus on this, and I think if you look at the integrative thing, you're looking at all of them, and they're all good. But we're going to focus on the one. So this is what the ancestors said. A purely psychological interpretation of dreams is limited and discounts a guiding, non-local spirit source that can be nurtured and is personal. So you can nurture this if you have a dream practice, and it's going to be highly personal. What I'm going to talk about today, the dreams I might mention, are not going to be the same ones that you have, but clearly you have to develop your own. You've got your own sort of core strength in your dream, and that's what you need to focus on. Don't think about trying to get somebody else's dreams or try and practice being lucid for many, many months, because it's probably not going to happen like it didn't for me. So your destiny is the hunt of your life. Keep to the scent, follow the spoor. In a sense, the ancestors or the spirit guides are your app to your destiny. They are there to nudge you in the direction of your destiny. They can't tell you what to do because free will is the cosmic law, so they can only nudge and suggest and instruct you on particularities that have to do with a particular question because of free will. They also help you with your karma, and so do dreams. If you see yourself playing out something that wasn't so good that you did in real time, that can sort of suggest to you that may not be a good karmic thing to have done. So guides and ancestors, I'm using them synonymously, remembering that there are your own bloodroot ancestors that include anything in the current day, anybody who has gone passed over to the other side. Remembering also that there could also be anybody who loved you, a friend, a lover, a teacher. It doesn't have to be your bloodroot ancestors. Frequently it's others. But the foreign ancestors that the Africans talk about, or spirit guides, are often quite exotic. So, you might hear somebody say, well, I've got a Tibetan spirit guide. But don't poo-poo it, because we circle in and out of different lifetimes, and we collect spirit guides according to people we know in the previous lifetimes. And these are sometimes exotic. We've all cycled through different cultures, different religions, different races. So it's not unusual to have an exotic spirit guide. They may be your brothers and your mothers or your sisters or your lovers in past lives. So I want to talk a little bit about the stages of death. We'll do another talk maybe next year about death. But we have to know a little bit, because this is where the dreams are coming from. So firstly, when the silver cord gets cut and the soul releases from the body when we take our last breath, it's important to go into an existential free fall without attachment, without fear, without confusion. We'll see why. And then you pass over beyond the veil to the other side, and then you go into a number of different possibilities. There are countless vibratory realms. We'll touch on them. And then there are pathologies of these realms. And there are a few points here where you release and you pass over. Often the spirits don't go over to the other side of the veil. Initially, they hang around the earth plane to check in and see how things are going. What's the funeral like? How was my obituary? Did they make flowers for me? Are they fighting about the will? All this kind of stuff. And then they check over to the other side. But some of them become earthbound for the reasons we'll discuss. These pathologies of death are really important, because sometimes the dead will hang around the living and imprint on them either dreams, or at least they'll be there and you don't know why they're there or why they're showing up and they don't look happy. So we're going to talk about that. So this is there are really two kinds of earthbound spirits. And remember, there's nothing good about an earthbound spirit haunting your house. It gets in the way of your energy flow, and it blocks your aura and can cause depression, anxiety, and so on. So the spirits that are earthbound usually have had certain reasons that have kept them there. But the ones that I'm talking about, the ones in the first 30 days or month or so, they come to announce their death. Sometimes, maybe some of you have had this happen, where somebody has passed on and you know about it before you hear about it. A couple of people have done this. They come to complain they've not been properly put to rest or request attention. Maybe they left $10,000 under the mattress and they want to tell you it's there. They come to have closure, a last visit, reassure, and have unfinished business finished. It's really important to have any skeletons in the family closet resolved before death. And they come to ask or give forgiveness, and much later on may become guides. One of my favorite uncles who died showed up as a guide, I think 15, 20 years later. So remember, there's no time on the other side. They are, and everything is happening at once. So don't be surprised if you don't see anybody and then they show up much, much later. Now this earthbound spirit is kind of different. They are voluntary. These are usually spirits that love you very much, like a spouse or something like that, that want to be sure you're okay, because they know the sentient being, the one on the planet, is really suffering a lot, and they want to come to them in dreams and reassure them and be there with them until they're ready to let them go. This is quite common. So they retard their progress and they retard their going over to the other side voluntarily, and they know they need to be on the other side, as opposed to the other earthbound spirits who don't know. Some of them are lost between the worlds and don't even know they're dead, you know. And that's a problem for them, because they do have to go back to the light to reconcile with their karma. Eventually these spirits will check out and go over to the other side when they know that their loved one is okay with them leaving and the loved one gives them permission to leave. Anybody had that happen? Yeah, quite a few. Yeah. So there are actually several kinds of ways they can become earthbound. Now, these earthbound spirits are usually the ones that are dishonored, they have unfinished business. The commonest thing I see in my practice is fighting about a will, you know. The will has been given to a favorite person, and the rest of the family are suing them. They come for a divination to help them, and these are usually hanging around because of this kind of unfinished business. Attachments to things, anything, attachment to job, to home, to a car, to an object, is very important. One has to go naked when one dies. You have to go completely unattached to anything. You can't take any of it with you. Fear, confusion, drugs, in other words, a sudden traumatic death, murder, suicide especially, can create an earthbound spirit. False beliefs. Somebody who didn't believe in an afterlife is much more likely to be earthbound. And finally, abortion and miscarriage. Sometimes the little soul might be stuck between the worlds. And these can visit and come in dreams, or at least come as a presence or a feeling that something's not right, and then one has to go into it and take care of it, because it's not good having a spirit around you. So I want to talk a little bit about the cosmology, remembering this is a timeless reality. So if this is the individual who's bound by free will and has to sort of come into connection with their destiny, will be accountable for adhering to that special gift we were given by the Creator that nobody else can do. We are not allowed to reconcile ourselves to our fate, which is the cards we were dealt in life. So here are the earthbound spirits I was talking about, the ones that are lost between the worlds. Here are the others that are voluntary. Here's the veil between the worlds. And here are our astral guides. Astral we're going to talk about. These are usually the guides that we are talking about, that you're going to visit. There are multiple vibratory realms, countless realms. The causal guides are the perfected souls, the self-realized beings who don't need to come back, but they can do work from the other side. Some of you will connect with causal beings, some of you here maybe even with angelic beings. But then there are the dark side of the world, the spirit world, the tricksters or the dark forces, the shades that we're going to talk about, intrusive spirits, not necessarily dark, but dysfunctional. And then, of course, the lower realms we don't need to worry about, the hungry ghosts as described by the Buddhists. So the Buddhists say that death and the dream state are very similar, and that the dream state can be a practice for death. And if you look at the stages, there's the death when we release, there's the intermediate stage where we reconcile with our karma, and then we get reborn again. And this happens countless times, the so-called samsara, where we cycle in and out of different lifetimes until we've perfected our soul. And they talk about the fact that the dreamless sleep, the deep delta sleep, when we first fall asleep, is like death. And then we go through the dream or the REM sleep in the early hours of the morning, and then we awaken to a new day, which is like the rebirth. So the dead and the living can best meet in the intermediate stage, that's the astral, when the veil between the worlds is the most permeable. Remember that it's in the early hours of the morning that you're going to get your dreams, in REM sleep. And this is the time that you must not move in your bed. Keep dead still, don't change your position, don't reach for your smartphone to document the dream or your dream journal. Just stay there, recollect the dream of the night, repeat it to yourself several times and then do something about it. Otherwise it'll go. Mostly the dead that we encounter are reconciling with their karma in the astral or earthbound, and this is not a good thing. You need to help these go back to where they are. If you know anybody who might be earthbound who had a traumatic death, which is the commonest cause, they usually hang around bars and certain hotels and war fields and hospitals especially. That's why you can say Murphy's Law is a result of earthbound spirits. In the hospitals, you don't like doctors and nurses. So often when a nurse or a doctor has surgery, there are problems. So earthbound spirits are very prevalent in the hospital situation. We are carried by our hearts, love, that's our love, our heart chakra and karma, to the realm we feel most at home. We can only go to where we can vibrate. You can't go higher. Unfortunately, you can go lower. So this is the reason for the Tibetan Book of the Dead, where they would relate things for 49 days to help the spirit pass over and go to the right realm. We lose touch with those we can no longer vibrate with, remembering that spiritual masters can travel freely through all the realms. To others, the higher realms are invisible. You can't go higher because it's vibrationally uncomfortable for you to go higher. So I want to talk a little bit about how guides happen. When dead, you can influence on behalf of others, but no longer for yourself. The last chance for determining and acting for your own mission and fulfillment is with your last earthly breath. This is really important. You lose free will once you die and you go to the astral. The perfected beings retain free will. You are then stuck with how you are and where you were, except for one thing. You can become a guide. You can become a guide and you can work through somebody else's free will. So the astral is a school for the higher self where we go to reconcile with our karma. Following that, basically there are two options. We reincarnate into the life, into a family that will teach us the lessons we need to know, or we can become a guide. Now, the guides retain their persona, they retain their language, they even retain their dress. They may look different, they might look younger, they sometimes come in resplendent dresses. Mostly they're going to dress the way they like to dress, when you knew them. They keep their sense of I, and they keep their religion, they keep their culture, but remember they are now not the same. They've been through a reconciliation process. For instance, the person who didn't believe in an afterlife might come and say, hey, I was wrong, there is an afterlife, and I'm sorry. So in reality, you can become a guide, and then you can come through in this way, and you might recognize your ancestors coming in this way. Sometimes they come in a different persona, but you know it's them. And it might be they come in the persona of a past life when you knew them, just to tell you this is what I used to look like in the other life. But it's them, but they look different. So don't be surprised if you see somebody who doesn't look like them, but you know in the dream that it's them. So the reason, this is important because they now gain new knowledge. They are released from their prior dysfunctions to some extent. They're obviously going to have to reincarnate to fix the serious ones. And you might say, well, they're non-local as well. You might say, why should I worry about my grandfather? He was a literate farmer, and I've got 3 PhDs. Why should I listen to what he has to say? Well, this is the reason. They're non-local in space and time. They're quantum spirits. They can be in more than one place at one time, and they have access to your karmic life book. They know who you are. They know all your lifetimes. They know your book of life. They can help you with your destiny. So it doesn't matter, as long as you loved them and they weren't dysfunctional, and you don't want to have any dysfunctional guides around you, especially if they create a bad energy. They can be very useful to you. They can save your life. So intrusive spirits can come in your dreams, and they usually come because of guilt, shame, remorse, and what they were looking for is for us to release them with forgiveness. Forgiveness will release you from any karmic sin. So the dead hanging around the living, sometimes coming in dreams, sometimes just you feel them around you, maybe in the day. You didn't like them, you're pleased they're gone, but you might need to forgive them. And there are many, many reasons I don't have time to go into for forgiveness, but forgiveness is more useful for the person doing the forgiving than even for the person that's been forgiven. It's very helpful to forgive. So you have to also remember that there are lower vibrational astral spirits that may have their own agendas. For instance, those of you who've gone to seances or played with Ouija boards, often these are trickster spirits who mean no good. They can pretend to be your mother because they are non-local. Remember, they'll know your mother's name and so on. And there's no point in hanging around with these people. The ancestors sometimes call these people evil ancestors, evil guides. Why? Because they can try and influence your free will. They might come to you in a dream telling you, in a sense, you need to be with this person, either in relationship or in business or whatever, and it's really to your disadvantage to be with them rather than to your advantage. They really are trying to advance their own progeny. They're trying to enhance their ability by letting them parasitize you. So be careful of some of your dreams. Sometimes somebody comes with a dream that they had this very romantic about somebody. They think, well, I really should be with this person. Not necessarily, maybe, but not necessarily. It might be scripted by the other person's ancestors because it will be useful for them to be with you. Way back when I had this dream that said the snake brings the dream. And the snake is the Kundalini. All African tribes believe in a primitive energy down in the lower belly, which is feminine in nature, and especially the Venda people in the north recognize it as it being a serpent. The young women, when they do the initiation dance, do this Domba dance. You can go online and look it up. It's beautiful. The Domba is a python dance where they mimic a huge python, about 30, 40, maybe even 100 young women simulating a python dancing when they go through their initiation. So this is called the Umbelini by the Zulus. It's called Num by the Bushmen. It's universal. We all have the Kundalini. It's not a yoga thing. We all have it. We have the snake. The more we focus on our snake and our spiritual practice, the more we'll open our third eye to the dream world. So how do we open the veil between worlds and get our dreams scripted? Well, nurture the snake, which means spiritual practice. Anything done for its own sake, especially if it's embodied in spiritual practice. Play your guitar, sculpt, paint, it doesn't matter. And have an ancestor practice that we're going to talk about. You want to enhance your vibration. That's really what you're doing with your spiritual practice, to open up your third eye so that you can dream better. And this involves a dream practice, which we're going to be talking a lot about, and love and gratitude. So, and this usually also involves setting up a little altar to your ancestors. Now, a visitation, I'm sure some of you have had this. A visitation is not a dream. It's the person is there. Who's had a visitation here? I'm sure many of you have. Yeah. The person is actually there. To the extent that you are open to the person, and also to the extent of the skill of the person, they will come with more or less information. They may be able to speak to you. I can give you an example if we have time in the question and answer period. But they are there, and they usually come on special occasions. They come to empower you or to give you a message that's really important. And it takes them tremendous energy, much more energy than a dream. So when you have a visitation by the ancestors, it's an occasion for celebration. Go to your altar and say thank you. It's almost like they flew from South Africa to Santa Barbara just to visit you and give you the message. That's the kind of energy we're talking about. It's not easy to script a visitation, and it does require some skill. So dreams can be as powerful as visitations, though they are subject to interference, to pollution, to tricksters who can play with them. That may not apply to most of the people here, but some of you it will apply to, so we'll talk about it. They use established receptacles. I'm using the ancestors' words to just tell you this is not coming from me. It's coming from a bunch of spirits, Celtic, Kabbalistic, and African. All of them agree with the same thing. They will use established receptacles, especially symbols and images in the dreamer's consciousness, and what can be recalled in memory. It takes them much more effort to script a new dream. So they'll rather take a memory or an imprint or an image that's already in your memory bank to script. The established reservoir of symbols and images in the psyche is highly individual. This is really important. So you have to know what the symbol means for you, or why is it that your ancestors are scripting this symbol. This is really important. For instance, if a Venda person or a Venda tribesman in South Africa dreams a fish, he's going to think, well, I'm going to get money. Completely different to a Christian who dreams about fish, you know. So it's really important to know the culture of the person. This is why I don't trust these books, because the books are talking about the subconscious and they're talking about universals specifically to them, and it may not apply to you. There is one universal that applies to most of us, that's the car. You know, if you're driving your car and it's going backwards, you're in trouble. Your ancestors are not happy. If you're sitting in the back of your car and somebody's driving you, you're not in control of your life. If you have no brakes, you know, and you've lost the steering, you're out of control. So the car is a very easy thing for them to script for you, because it's, you know, and if they put you in an old car, like, you know, one you drove, you know, 20 years ago, it means something you need to break away from. Anybody have car dreams? Yeah? Yeah, common. Because it's easy to do. So that's one of the ones that I'll do. Remembering that these dreams can either be the recent image or a past image. The recent ones are easier. For instance, if you are watching about floods and so on, and people being completely devastated by floods in their house, and then you have a similar dream that your house has been flooded out, and you think, oh no, that's probably because, you know, I just saw that on TV or something. Not necessarily. You should look at what your life is at the moment. Is there something that's going to drown you? Are you going into a business venture? Are you going to buy a house? Are you going into a relationship? They'll use a dream like that to get your attention. So don't discount recent dreams that you've read in the newspaper or that you've seen on TV. Be warned that dreams speak not the way things have to be, but the way they will be unless action is taken. Remember, the dreams are like the bones, the divination bones. They tell you what to see. You have free will. You can decide what you want to be. I'll give you an example. For instance, you are going to do a trip to China, you know, and like this is 2 months ago, and you get a dream that you're in China and you're in the hospital on a respirator. And you think, well, that's kind of strange, you know, you won't think too much of it, but it's a terrifying dream. I mean, you almost feel like you're dying. They are telling you, because they're not localized in space and time, they can tell into the future. They are telling you, don't go to China. Then, of course, what happens, you get a thing about the coronavirus, and if you've got any sense, you cancel your flight. But assuming you never saw anything about the coronavirus or it didn't come out, they would have warned you not to go to China. So it's really important to listen to the dreams. They can't save you from your own free will, but they will try and tell you in no uncertain terms that you shouldn't do this. Beware of making the interpretation of the dream fit to what monkey or narrow mind desires. Monkey mind is our primitive survival mind. It's linked very strongly to our ego. You know, sometimes you want to turn the dream around to what you want it to mean rather than what they're trying to tell you it means. So always look at the flip side and maybe get somebody who you respect who can help you and say, this is the dream I got, what do you think? And then you can say what you thought, and they might say, well, I don't think so, you know, I think they're really trying to tell you the opposite. So be careful of your own interpretation of the dream. Use other people that you respect. The most skillful interpreter, even one who knows you very well, can at best only be revealing, suggesting, and guiding. This again is similar to the divination bone. When I remember when I was learning the bones in South Africa, there was always the Sangoma would always say to the person, Siyabuma, do you agree? They want to know that you agree with what they're saying, because it might not fit with what you're thinking. Because remember, they are trying to interpret your dream. The bones are looking at the waking dream that's your life, and you might get a certain interpretation of the dream which is different to the other person that's interpreting. You are the final arbitrator of the dream, so be sure that you don't listen to anybody else if you think they're instinctively wrong. Now this is really important. This is from the Zohar, and it says the dream follows its interpretation. We'll look at that in a bit. But there are a lot of things that are going to influence the dream. Firstly is your ego, monkey mind, narrow mind. Your psyche is clutter. Just recently, my son related a dream to me. And there was a lot of clutter in the dream. It was a very powerful dream. So you have to take the clutter away. There wasn't any ego in the dream, but there was a lot of psyche in the dream, and there may have been some fear in the dream. Remember, if you have a fear of flying, and before you take your flight, you have a dream that the plane is going to crash, it may not mean that you've got to cancel your flight. It might be that the dream has been scripted by your fear and not by your ancestors telling you not to go on that flight. So sometimes it can be difficult. It's also important to know that there can be interference, corruption, pollution of the files in your dream psyche that can mess with the dream and give you this kind of psyche's clutter. So it's important to know the person, at least know something about their culture, their religion, and what those symbols are going to mean to them before you venture a dream interpretation. Somebody who's got a strong spiritual focus, if you're going to go and try and get your dream interpreted and you think it's a scripted dream, go to somebody who's got a kind of a spiritual focus and knows about what we're talking about today. Be careful of the interpretation, because this is what the Zohar is talking about. A dream contains both truth and lies. The truth is there in the scripted dream, but the lies might be interference from files being corrupted. It could be your fear, it could be your psyche's clutter, it could be a lot of other things. A dream contains both truth and lies, and hence the words of interpretation prevail over everything, and that they will determine whether the true or the false shall prevail. So this is important, because if your dream is making you have a certain intention, your action is going to follow the intention, and then you will self-actualize your own dream. And that may not be the best thing. So the interpretation is very important in terms of having a positive spin as much as you possibly can on a dream. If you get a nightmare like the China dream, there's no way of interpreting that any other way. You cancel your flight. But I'm talking about the more subtle kinds of dreams. Now, the other thing that's important is your subconscious, remembering that we often play out what our subconscious is talking to us in the background. The subconscious is always recording everything. And no matter what we think, we often act out of what our subconscious thinks rather than what our conscious thinks. So if in your subconscious is imprinted with this idea that this is the interpretation of the dream because that's how you woke up, and somebody else reinforces it, that could be another reason why the dream will follow its interpretation, and what will happen is it'll actualize in the way that you've interpreted it, which it may not be a good thing. So this is just a word of caution. Those with a high level of spirituality are able to activate positive energy even from the most negative dream. This also touches on the idea of the nocebo effect, the opposite of placebo, the power of nocebo to hurt, harm, or even kill you. So you don't want to hex yourself by the wrong interpretation of the dream. If possible, rather have a positive slant on the dream. If you see yourself as dying, it may not mean you're dying. It might mean it's more likely to be rebirth. But rather look at it as rebirth, because you might self-actualize a problem with your, a negative problem. If you're doing meaningful spiritual work, you will be opposed. So some of you here are doing, who knows, you may have a shamanic inclination, you might be psychotherapists who are dealing with people with severe problems, you might even be somebody who does soul retrievals. Anybody here doing soul retrieval? Anyway, that's when somebody goes out into the beyond the veil to recapture somebody who's lost their soul, and often they are dealing with dark forces on the other side of the veil. So to the extent that it's called a costly compliment, the deeper the spiritual work you are doing, the more interference you're going to have by tricksters, because you are a reproach to the tricksters. Somebody like Gandhi or the Buddha is a reproach to the trickster world, and they have obviously will try and attack them as much as they can. But most of us don't have to worry too much about this, but it's just worth knowing. Somebody who's doing exorcisms, like in the church, is in serious danger, because of the fact that they'll be coming up against the spiritual mafia. Remember, exorcism is alive and well, fortunately, because no amount of psychotherapy is going to help somebody who's possessed. So these are the truths, which is really a summary of what I'm talking about. Visitations are not dreams, but visits and require a lot of energy, so they're an occasion for gratitude. Spirits use the easiest channels and preset symbols. They're not going to script their own symbol or dream. Dreams cannot easily be called. I'm going to tell you how you can call them, and it's also good to have a container, such as we're going to talk about an altar. I brought some mugwort along. It's a Cumes plant to help with dreams. Anybody who's interested in it, we can talk about it. There's some on the back table. Take a leaf. It's an artemisia, so it does have slightly mind-altering properties. It's not going to have any on you, but it's the same family as Artemisia absinthiae, which is the absinthe artemisia, which does have serious altering properties. Beware the interpretation which sets the intention and the action. Dreams reveal truths but also untruths, and dreams hold the possibility of pollution. Why complex metaphors? Just looking at my time here. Well, if you are having a lot of tricksters in your dreams, your guides are going to try and find codes to come through to you. They're going to find a way to slip the message through. It's a bit like the Russians, you know. If you think of the internet, you know, that's why they told me to talk about it like a computer. The cyber world is such that, you know, if the Democrats want to be smart, they don't use apps for their, you know, I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. No guy in his right mind, especially after they've been hacked before, would have, you know, they say, well, they didn't know what the app was about, but I wouldn't be surprised that if you talk about it in terms of the dreams, the tricksters sabotage the whole thing. And that's exactly how all this works. So this is really important because this will allow them to come through in code, if you want to talk about it. So if you have a complex dream you don't understand, write down all the details and then work with it, because hidden in there somewhere, especially with the interference, will be the message. So don't be put off by it. I can give you some examples of some complex ones if we have time, but I'm more interested in hearing your dreams. I want to leave time for that. Free will tells us to see, not what to be. You know, we have free will to decide what happens. The veil opens closer to death. So sometimes people, when they're getting close to death, will see their guides, will see their ancestors. Sometimes they get quite perturbed by them because maybe they've got bad karma. Sometimes they feel very reassured and loved, and they don't feel bad about passing on. Now, the big dreams these are the big dreams, what Jung would call a big dream. The nightmare is the big dream of the night. Obviously, if you're too hot, or you had too much wine, or you had a heavy meal, and you have a nightmare, you know, you may not have to worry about it too much. Or if you have serious fears, you know, about something or other. But the ancestors are going to come, and they're going to script the dream to get your attention. They're going to exaggerate the dream. So in the Chinese example, you know, you're not going to be on a respirator in the hospital, but they want to tell you that it's serious, and they want you to pay attention. It probably means if you go to China now, you're going to have a miserable flight, and you'll probably be quarantined, and you'll miss your chances. It's not what's going to happen. It's what, you know, it's sort of a metaphor of a diluted form of what could happen. The recurring dream is something you're not paying attention to. Something that's long-lasting, not immediate, something that's chronic. They keep coming back again and again, something that's interfering with your progress in life. And if anybody has recurring dreams, we can talk about it. The visitation we've talked about, using other channels. Who here gets somebody else's mail? It's called getting somebody else's mail. Anybody? It's really important. Anybody here that somebody else has got your mail? Yes, one in the back. No. Sorry?
What does that mean?
It means that somebody else has a dream for you. And what that's something you need to pay attention to. Somebody you might know who's easier, they'll come to the easiest channel. You know, if they can't come to you, they'll come to somebody else. I've had my dreams blocked for the last few years, and they come to my business manager, Adrian. And they sometimes come to my daughter because they can't get through to me. So they'll come to the easiest dream. The important thing is that if you have a dream coming to you from somebody else, pay attention to it. And if for any reason you get a dream for somebody else, you've got to pass on the message. It's like getting somebody else's parcel. You know, you've got to be very gentle with it, yeah?
What about when two people dream the same dream?
That's another story. We can do it in the questions. It means you're very closely connected usually. You've got a very close bond. But I lost my train of thought. Talking about getting somebody else's mail. But if you get somebody else's mail, be very careful how you tell it to them. You know, for instance, if you have a picture of them and you're looking, this is my own example. I would dream a friend of mine who I went through medical school with, I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. I have a dream about him. I know he's not well. I know that much about him. And I'm looking at an X-ray or CAT scan of his abdomen, and something looks wrong. So I call him up and I said, "Hey, Jules, you know, I just had a dream about you. Are you interested in hearing about it?" And if he says, "No, I don't believe in that stuff," then say, "Well, are you sure?" And then if he says no, then you've done your job, you know. But if he says yes, don't say, "Hey, you know, I think you got cancer." You better, you know, say, "You know, I had this dream and I was looking at an X-ray of you, and you know, have you had a colonoscopy recently?" And he said, "Yeah, actually." He said, "Yeah, I have had one." I said, "Are you having any symptoms?" Because, of course, we're both physicians. And he said, "No, not really." I said, "Well, it's probably nothing, but maybe, you know, you want to get it checked out." Because sometimes I know cases where people have delayed and they've been sorry they're delayed because somebody could have been diagnosed much sooner. But don't come with the message that you interpret you think it meant. Even if you think you saw a cancer there, don't say it. Say, "You know, I think maybe, you know, this looks something wrong there, maybe you need to get a checkup." So be very careful of what you say, because you could be wrong. Could be a trickster trying to... That's not yours, is it? I don't think so. Could be a trickster trying to discredit you. Speaking in tongues. This is kind of interesting. Now we've got Google. You can look up the words, but sometimes you'll get it in a foreign language. And that'll be very clear. Write it down and then look up what it means, because often that'll be the message. And that's the way they get through the spyware. Is that somebody's cell phone, or is that the... it's not your thing there. Yeah, just turn off the phones, please. Yeah. Speaking in tongues, yeah. And now, getting somebody else's mail is a way of getting your attention. It's an effective way of informing and empowering. You cannot easily dismiss it because, you know, it's coming through somebody else. But nobody seems to have had them. But if you do, or you get one, then be sure to, if it's relating to this.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Quick question. Getting somebody else's mail, what if you can't see who it's addressed to, but then after you have the dream, it's very obvious that that's who the dream is?
Then it's okay. You can tell them.
What if it's too late?
No. It's usually way before it's going to happen. It's plenty of time. You know, later on when you know, you'll usually find out. You know, then still it's not your fault. You know, then if that's that, you're clear. Your karma is clear. If you don't know, then you can't pass it on. So when I did this Jungian conference, I thought of this computer model, and this may not apply to most of you, but this does. Essentially, the ancestors copy and they paste into your dream psyche, but before that, they put it through Photoshop and they tweak it. So, you know, the house that you see may not be the house that you know. Things look different. It might be that, you know, that it's not coming through clearly, but it could also be that they want to change the dream a little bit. Like the car that you're driving isn't the car that you drive now. It's the car that you drove 10 years ago to give you another message. Then they paste it into your dream psyche, and this is where the truth and the lies come from, because tricksters can mess with your dreams. They can corrupt it, if you like, in Photoshop. They can copy and paste their own dreams. They can block your dreams. So this is how, in all dreams there are truth and lies. When you start to develop a really strong practice, it might be of use to you. Now, this is a classification I use. This is relevant to, I think, all of you, but maybe the rest of it won't be. Firstly, I look at the form of the dream. What form did it come in? Then I look at the message. What are they trying to tell me? And then I look at the sensory aspects, which will usually tell you how important the dream is and more about the dream. Now, this is about the ones I've had, so it doesn't apply to most of you here, but what I recommend is you work out the ones the way that you get your own dreams. So the form, the last 72 hours, I think applies to everybody. Don't discount like I used to discount that these are not important dreams. They might be. Look at the context in which they happen. The apparition, anybody have like a phantom come into the dream? Usually it's a warning. I won't tell you what mine, I've had a couple of them. It's usually a warning to do with that particular person. It might be that they're going to pass soon or something like that if they appear. Acts of a play, anybody have those? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. That's usually going to tell you how things are going to play out. Like I say, these don't apply to most people. But find your own one. A sense of knowing or clarity, this is very, very common. You just wake up in the morning, you had something that was perplexing you, and you have the answer. Don't assume that you're brilliant and it always happens because you just are so amazing either in the day or at night. Go to your altar and say thank you because it may not have come from you. Power animals, land, seascapes. Who sees power animals in their dreams or animals? Usually people who are nature bound, like indigenous people, they will see power animals in their dreams. Who sees them in awake time? Butterflies, hummingbirds, yeah. Those, you see, they can do the same thing in awake time. So the power animal that you see, the butterfly, is just to give you some kind of a message, or a hummingbird is just to tell you that they're around. They may not come with a message at all. Indigenous people are seeing land and seascapes probably for a long time now, because the Native Americans have been talking for some time about the red skies are coming, and the red skies are here. They've been saying it for a long, long time now, and only now we are starting to pay attention.
What is that?
The red sky is about, what happens when fires come. I mean, you see what Australia is here, red sky, Personas, imposters. Sometimes you'll see somebody in your dream, a good friend or maybe a loved one, and doesn't seem quite the same. There's something wrong with the picture. Not only isn't it the same, but they're not behaving in the usual way. This may be a trickster shape-shifting into another, into somebody that they want to show in a bad light, and usually your heart will tell you that they're wrong. This is also important. You might just get a word or a quote. Somebody who's sort of got a biblical inclination might get Matthew chapter 1, verse 2. And right there will be the message you need to go, and that's for you. Rather than write out the whole thing, it's much too much energy. They'll just give you the quote. Songs. Anybody get songs in their dreams that have the message? Somebody there. A couple of people. That's really important. They'll script a song with the words, and the words of the song are exactly what you need to pay attention to. Way back when I was dating a woman, and I had this beautiful song, some of you may know it, may as well try and catch the wind. So I knew what it meant. May as well try and catch it. I didn't bother anymore, because my ancestors would tell you, don't waste your time. Getting other people's mail, and times we've talked about other realms and lifetimes. This is really important because it happens to a lot of you. Remembering that in the dream time, when you travel with your dream body into other vibrations, you often are visiting people that you know in the dream, people familiar, but you don't know when you wake up, because you knew them in a past life, or you go into parallel universes. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good, where you're hanging around people and that are not familiar to you. It's almost like you're a traveler.
How about if you see a dead animal on the way of hiking or on the ocean?
If you see a dead animal, all right, I'll just mention that because it's important. If you see a snake or a dead one or an alive one, it can be a message from your ancestors, very much an African tradition. If you see a python in your dream, or you see a python in Africa, it's the ancestors, and it means you're doing good work, they're happy with you, they're coming to visit you. It's like a visitation. If you see a mamba, which is a deadly snake, or a cobra, then they're saying, be careful, it's a very serious warning. I remember in South Africa when I was at my center, we had a lot of black mambas at the place. Whenever I saw a black mamba, which was not that common, I knew something bad was going to happen, so I would pay attention. So if you see a rattlesnake, a dead one, then I would be careful. If you see a grass snake, dead or alive, a gopher snake or something like that, especially a king snake, beautiful red stripes and white and yellow, that's like seeing a python. It's like your ancestors are coming to you in a big way. I used to see them much more now, but since the fires, they're not so much on the trails anymore. But if you go into the back country, you can still see them, and sometimes in the forecountry. So animals are important, dead or alive, usually, at least they may be, more so when they're alive, because they get moved to you. The ancestors can manipulate them like they can a dream to get them to send you a message of support or warning. The message is, and these are universal, either to warn you, the nightmare, to nudge you in a certain direction, to instruct or teach you, remembering also that when they copy and paste into your dream psyche, you may not remember it, but when you see it again, you'll remember it. So you'll get a sense of deja vu. So a lot of folks are getting taught in their dreams, but you don't know you are because you wake up and you go to work, but then you read something and you say, where have I read that before? And you haven't read it before. They put it in your dream psyche, but it's important. So instruct or teach, you may know it, but you may not. Empower and visit intrusive dreams. If you get somebody who's sitting on your bed and it's not nice, it's dark, it might mean there's an earthbound spirit in your house, or if you have an intrusive foreign spirit, somehow you picked it up somewhere along the way. If you have a sense of your father there and you loved your father, that's a dream, in the dream or when you wake up. It's the same as having a dream. It's not like you're not dreaming. So an intrusive dream can be positive, or usually this is a negative thing. Now this is a title that I ascribe to Steve Eisenstadt. He's the dream guru of Pacifica Graduate Center, some of you know. He's a very, he's great. If you want to look at the psychology of dreams, he's a guy to go and listen to. He says there's some dreams you don't know what they mean, so you should tend them. In other words, log them down. You probably will remember them because they're very important, and you just don't understand them. And sometime later, remembering that there's no time on the other side, the dream might come to you and reinforce what you have to do. For instance, I had two dreams when it came to finding my healing center. The one was an epic dream, a huge dream where the dream was vibrating. I was in this beautiful place in South Africa, and I won't elaborate. But the dream I had like 20 years before that was a dream of a house in a similar area in the bush in South Africa, and there was a house without a roof on it. And when I eventually found the place, and I thought, well, I don't know if is this it, isn't it? There was a house there without a roof on it. So I knew this dream that I tended for 15, 20 years was telling me you're in the right place, you found it now. So tend to those dreams. Be careful of saying only a dream, because don't discount anything, it might be important. Sensory aspects, remembering those of you that are clairvoyant or clairaudient or clairsentient, the same things occur in dreams. You might see, you might hear, you might feel. Frequently you have a feeling from a dream, and that feeling is just as important as if you had a vision or somebody say a word to you. The color, the numinous dreams are big dreams. They usually are very important. It means you really have to pay attention. The intensity of the dream will sometimes tell you as well. Kundalini, anybody have pulsations, vibrations, or energy moving in your body at night? That's a good sign. It means, you think you're not in good vibration, but your chakras are actually tuning up. You're making progress. So that's a good sign. It may not be a dream, but it's reinforcing that your snake is working. A presence, an energy there can be good or bad, light or dark. Remembering that if you see a foreign ancestor and they visit you, you could freak out and it could be fearful, but it's not dark. Fear is not the same as something dark, evil, bad. So that's something that you should appreciate. The fear is just an aspect of it. But if you have a sort of a dark feeling about it, it might be an intrusive presence. remembering fear is usually the big dream of the night and the nightmare, which they want to make sure you pay attention to. So I'm going to end off with this idea of a dream practice. Those of you who don't have an altar, I highly suggest you do make one. Put out a white cloth. You can put your dream container, whether it's your smartphone, just tell the ancestors you're going to use the phone. You want to communicate with them, with your guides, and tell them you want to get dreams, because you have to ask to receive. Or put your dream journal on there and then take it to bed at night. Put photos or any other container, a ring or a necklace or a watch or something on there. You might even want to wear it if you know that person's an ancestor. It's a container for the dream. The mugwort that I've put at the back is a container for a dream. It might not bring you the dream, and if you want to use it, just take a little bit, about that much, and you can either suck it or chew it, and sit on your bed and ask 3 times for a dream. Be very specific about what you ask, and ask 3 times to remember the dream, and then be sure that in that early hours of the morning when you wake up, don't jump up to pee or to put on the light or to have a glass of water. Don't move in your bed. Then try and recover the dream, and you might get it. Sometimes we know this is how we forget the dream, because something reminds us about the dream in daytime. You read something in the newspaper, or somebody says a word to you and you remember the dream you had. So that's not as good as this lying still. So the other thing is gratitude, remembering that this is an ongoing relationship. You should not worry if you don't hear back. Keep up the relationship. They love you. They will try to get through to you in some way. So make little offerings to them. Light a candle, light some incense. If you go for a walk and you find a feather or something nice, bring it, put it on your altar. Have a continual dialogue, even though they don't talk back to you. They'll talk back to you in some way or another. Just trust. Have rituals and maybe even a celebration. On the day they died, maybe, or on their birthday, you can make a meal for them. If you haven't yet had an ancestral altar, you could have a celebratory meal and put only the ones that you loved and that loved you on the altar. The fact that they didn't love you or you thought they didn't love you doesn't matter. As long as they're not toxic, you can put them on. You'd be surprised that the one who is dictatorial and authoritarian might be crazy about you, but you didn't like them as a child. But on the other side, they might really care for you, especially if you're seeing them in dreams. So maybe have a welcoming, do your altar, and then welcome them to the altar, welcome them to your dream time. You've got to ask to receive. Free will is really important. You can't say, help me with my life, because that's your job. But you can say, should I go to China? And maybe they'll give you a dream, State of mind is really important before you go to sleep. Don't move, no suppressants. Try not to have wine or anything like that if you want to dream. Obviously, if you're taking medications, it's going to cloud your dream time, although sometimes it enhances it, so it's hard to know. So conclusion, ask to receive. We help them by allowing them to help us. Remember that by allowing them to help us, we lift them up. It's called pagamisa in Zulu. You actually are helping them complete work that they didn't do in their previous life. So they can bump up their kind of karmic brownie points by being able to help you. And by the same token, they help you, you help them. Gratitude is the best way of nurturing the relationship. Have a dedicated spiritual practice. And love is the key. It's what enables them to cross the veil between worlds. That's why a woman who dreams about a daughter going into labor 3,000 miles away doesn't dream about the next door neighbor going into labor. It's a love connection. Love is the juice. It's a good time to stop. So why don't you take a break for 10 minutes, and then I want to come back and I want to just hear dialogue from you and what dreams you've been having, and have questions. So come back at 10 after, and we'll have questions and contributions, and then we'll do a meditation at the end. Okay, any questions? Questions, dreams to share? Anybody? Yeah.
I have a friend whose wife died suddenly in the hospital unexpectedly, and keeps dancing with her in his head and reading the love letters, and he's like still living with her.
Hmm.
What?
How long? How long?
A couple years, 2 years.
Is he seeing her? Is he dreaming her?
He's just obsessed with talking about her and missing her.
Hmm. Well,
It's like he hasn't let her go.
And it's his mother, is it?
No, his wife.
Wife, yeah. You know, excuse me, I just need the sweet. But he's, it's retarding his progress. It's not, I'm not sure you can do anything about it. But he needs to get on with his life, you know, rather than hanging on. But for some, the mourning takes longer, so they have to honor the process. But it might be that she's there with him, you know, if you go into it. Maybe he sees her in dreams, maybe he talks to her in the day. It can be very reassuring, but if it's getting to 2, 3, 4 years, it's time for him to maybe let go and give, if she's around the earth plane, it's time for her to check out, because it's retarding her progress and his progress. Sometimes the spirit won't leave until they're too worried to go, you know, they're worried what will happen. But if he's interested, which he might not be, I can help him and see if she's around, that might also be holding him. If she's not around, then it's easy, you know, then we can give him a ritual to do. But if she is around, we can also help her move over to the other side. Yeah. Any other questions or dreams? Right at the back, yeah.
So I'll ask you the question now.
Sorry, I can't hear one second.
I'll ask the question and I'll give you some background. So my question is like, how do you determine if like in your dream, if said like, I don't know, person is like either an ancestor or like you in possibly a past life? Because I really like my passion in life is chanting and Mongolian throat singing. And I've had dreams where I've seen the Lord Krishna a couple times. And I always just felt a connection there. And I really, and some of the chanting, and one of the, I could do like distinct voices. And one of them kind of sounds like an Indian woman, and like from India. And so I always felt a strong connection to like the gopis and Radha, Rana, Ari. But I had a dream a couple months ago, and all I remember basically was just like an Indian crone, like draped in a shawl, just singing songs in front of like a wall of like candles.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. Is that, you know, you've got guides, probably Native American guide from a previous life, or maybe who's been assigned to you. You know, the Lord Krishna, that's a bit far out to actually have him there. But you know, you could be dreaming from your chanting a representation of him. But it just means you're very connected to the spirit world with your chanting. It's not easy to do that Mongolian chant anyway, so there might be spirits that are helping you with that. But I would have an altar, and maybe if you can draw at all, maybe give a representation of the Native American guide or anybody else who's come in your dream, or if you have a sense of who they are, you could write a name if you get a name on your altar. Or if you don't have either of those, just put a crystal representing both of them, you know, or any others of them. But the more you talk to them, the more they'll help you with your work, because we're only as powerful as our ancestors are. And the more you engage them, and the more you ask them, and the more you trust, and the more you love, the more they come. So I think if you don't have an altar, make one. And there's clearly you're very connected to a lot of spirits. I can't really sort them all out for you. You've got to do that yourself. But I think that's great. Fantastic. Yeah. Yes?
I had a dream last night that I saw my youngest son, who has a chronic illness. He was looking through two books. One was the Torah or Talmud, and the other one was some kind of Hindu text, because I saw the blue deity. I'm not familiar with the Hindu religion. And then he came up to me, and he looked much taller than, he's the short one in the family. I have three sons. There two are really tall. He is shorter, and we're concerned that it has to do with his condition, him not growing as tall as the other two. And but he looked super tall to me, but he also looked thin, like unhealthy thin. And he was shaving his head, and I was helping him shave his head. So that was very confusing.
Okay. Did anybody hear that? Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have given you the mic. Let me see if I can repeat it. So, this is your youngest son of 3, and is he not well? I mean, does he have a condition?
He's doing well.
He's doing well.
He has Crohn's, but
Yeah.
we're managing it.
Yeah. How old is he?
He's 13.
He's 13. He's short, but he looked tall in the dream, and he shaved his head, but he looked thin and not so well. And am I leaving out the main anything else?
Yeah, he was reading some
Reading
books.
scripture. Yeah, I would say based on that you shouldn't worry about his height. That he's going to grow. If you've had him checked out and everything else, it's actually interesting that my grandson, similarly, everybody was worried about him. And his father's short. Is his father short?
Yeah, I'm the tall G.
You're the tall G. So, I think you can expect him to be sort of the same size as his father eventually. But my grandson, round about now, he had a bit of a growth spurt. And now he's much taller. So I think the dream is saying, don't worry about him. I think he was reading not only the Hebrew scripture, but another scripture.
He was tall. Once I looked at him, he was reading the Talmud.
Yeah, and what was the other one?
And then I turned at him again, and he's looking at the Sanskrit writing
Yeah.
with the blue deity.
He might turn out to be a monk. It might be that that of the two, he's going to prefer the more exotic one that's not from his tradition, and that eventually he'll find his way back. But
Well, the shaving of the head was concerning me. The overall feeling of the dream and the setting was peaceful and sunlit and good. But once I got to the part of the head shaving, maybe head shaving is the monk thing.
That's the monk thing. The head shaving is...
I was helping him do it.
Well,
and the funny part is that this is all new to me, and the spirits and coming here, but recently I've had some experiences that made me open up to this side of our existence, and I've been talking to him about it, and he's like, "Oh, you crazy mom, you're having a midlife crisis."
Well, maybe he'll change his mind, So I think it's a good dream, and I think it's a supportive dream because you are supporting him in his shaving, which is a good thing. And maybe he'll come around to being more open.
My fear, I guess, like when I woke up and I tried to analyze it, I was thinking, oh my God, could it be health related? Because for me, I've been so obsessed with his health that everything isn't about his health. So
That doesn't sound like it. If he's thin, I think you're worried about him, and that's probably what's coloring your dream. And mothers worry: is he going to be way short? Is he going to be okay? He's skinny. I wouldn't worry. Actually, I had a friend in South Africa who had a brother who was a skinny little kid, and his parents were fretting over the fact he wasn't growing. He turned out to be the captain of the hockey team in South Africa. So I wouldn't worry about it. I think that's what the dream's telling. He's going to be fine. Anybody else before? Yeah.
I just wanted to make how I can remember the dream. For example, I knew I dreamt last night, but I woke up not remembering.
I'll repeat it. How can she remember the dream? She remembered last night. What I said earlier is that when you wake up in the early hours in the morning, that's when you're going to have the REM sleep dreams that are coming from the ancestors. Do not move. It's very difficult. Mostly you forget, you know, you get up and go to the bathroom, or you get a glass of water and you have a drink, and then afterwards you think about the dream. But what you must do is just keep dead still, you know, don't move, don't change your position, don't do anything, and then just go over it and just say to yourself, did I have a dream? What was going on? You know, just try and remember what you had. And then it's like a butterfly that's flying around. You've got to catch it in the net, otherwise it's going to go. And when you've caught it, you repeat it again and again until you've got it, and then you can write down a few notes, or if you've got a smartphone, you can put it in your smartphone. But otherwise you'll forget it. It's normal. What you're doing is normal. You know you had something, but you don't remember what it is. Yeah.
So if you're trying to interpret dreams.
Here we go.
So if you're trying. If you're trying to interpret your dreams, and you're new to it, and the books are not really useful, where do you go?
What's the dream?
Oh, I'm in that same place.
Same
I know
place.
I dreamed last night,
And you don't
but
remember.
I can't remember. I go in periods where I have strong dreams, and I do retain them, and then long periods where I'm aware I'm dreaming, but I have no sense of them.
Yeah.
So I don't have one to give you an example of, but I'm interested in wanting to.
Are you keeping still, like we just talked about?
Well, that was an interesting part.
Yeah, no,
I
that's-
am waking up at the same time early morning,
Yeah.
and I do tend to get up and then come back to bed. So I'm going to take that advice.
It's not, no. It's
The other is that prior I would think I should get up and write down what I remember right away.
No, you don't, because then it'll be gone. By the time you get what you want, it's gone. You just go over it and over it till you have it, and then you write it down.
Right. So it's more just about listening to your intuition about what you think the symbols mean or what the message
Well,
is.
you got to remember it before you can interpret it.
Right.
But you
But-
don't have
but-
trouble. You don't have trouble interpreting the ones you remember, do you?
Well, that's what I mean. I would go and look up.
Well, instead
what
of this,
I-
why don't you tell me one of the dreams you can't understand? Because I think I've answered the question.
I can't recall something.
Okay.
So-
Well, that's why just keep a journal and remember this. You know, it'll be online. The handout really has the main principles. Have an altar. Don't move when you wake up. That's the best you can do. And it's not easy. I mean, I still often get up and then I forget, and then I kick myself because I didn't
Right.
remember to keep still. Any others? Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the connection between dreams and deja vu?
You know, I think the important thing is it's all the same thing, you know, and that's why our brains want to categorize things. So somebody came up at the break and told me about birds that they're seeing, you know. That's a dream. You know, the Bushmen are right. There's a dream dreaming me. It's dreaming you day and night, day and night. So there is no distinction between the day and the night. They're just a different context. It's like you opened another book. The truth in the one book is one truth, and the other book's another truth, but they're the same truth. So deja vu, any of those things, you know, everybody gets their messages in a different way. So a lot of what we talked about today, you know, may not apply to some of the folks here in terms of the form. Your form might be deja vu. Somebody else's form might be a power animal. Somebody else's form might be just a sense of awareness and awakening to some other understanding of a perplexing problem. So you have to just find out the one that's for you and focus on that, and that's the one that you ask for. Your ancestors will know how to get through to you, but you have to just accept that, you know, we would all like to have big dreams and be able to lucid dream, but we don't. But we all dream, we all have our own unique way of getting them. It's just a question of nurturing what it is you get and how your ancestors are going to be able to come to you. So I think deja vu is maybe you tapping into another lifetime. I don't know, maybe you're tapping into a truth. Maybe you think you've heard it before, but you haven't. They've told you it in your dream, but you remember it as, I know, I've heard this before. You know, so that's exactly what I'm talking about. And that comes in the daytime, right? So, you know, I know Sangomas who don't dream. They just see things in the day. You know, everybody's different. I think that's the most important thing. Don't try and be somebody else. It doesn't work. Your ancestors can't help you. Yeah.
So I have a recurring dream.
Sorry, I can't give you.
I'll just try to speak loud. I have a recurring dream that I have had for years, but it varies. But it has to do with a house with many rooms.
Yeah.
And oftentimes me going upstairs and exploring all the rooms upstairs. And sometimes it's the same house I visited before, and sometimes it's a whole different one. And last night I had this dream, but as I was going up the stairs started lifting me up into the upstairs, kind of like the Harry Potter staircase through an outlet. So I thought that was kind of cool. It felt like I feel like it's having to do with going to higher consciousness levels. And
Yeah.
my psyche telling me I need to go to higher consciousness levels.
I think it's telling you you're going to a higher consciousness level. You know, you already are going there. And that, you know, usually the house is your life, you know. If it's to do with your health, it might be indicating something's, you know, like, not in your case, might indicate something's wrong, you know. And the kitchen might be a different part of your body to, say, the attic, which might be the head, you know. But yours is more to do with a spiritual loftiness, that you actually have reached a certain stage where you're actually being propelled up, which is kind of interesting because, you know, the yogis say the most difficult chakra to open is the heart chakra, and once that's open, things start to really open very easily. Love is the biggest thing we have to get over. And the tree of life, they say that, you know, in the middle of the tree of life is the heart of the tree, which is called Tiferet. And they say that once the student has reached that and mastered that, he or she can teach themselves. So that's what I think your dream's meaning. It's like you're in your house, and now you're getting to another level in your house, the Harry Potter level. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
You said something about your dreams have been blocked lately, and somebody else is having some of your dreams. I'm wondering what it is that blocks.
Well, I'm one of those guys who, if you are doing spiritual work, you will be opposed. So I do, you know, if somebody's bewitched, I correct it. If somebody's got an intrusive ghost that's not cool, I get rid of it. And then the spiritual mafia don't like me. So they block me. Now it's opening up again. I'm getting them back. And the ancestors came to say, you've been blocked for 5 years, and now I don't want to tempt them, you know. So I won't say anything further. But I've been blocked, and, you know, but then they find another way to come through. Yeah. And the other thing is that, you know, everybody gets an answer to you and others. You get your messages on a different channel, like in the TV, you know. And the thing about getting somebody else's mail is they're going to that channel, and their channel is going to be very different. I worked very closely with Mary Ellen Kelly for many years until she passed, and she would get downloads in great detail and write them down. A lot of these quotes are her. I would get my dreams in metaphors and symbols and in songs, often original songs, the ones you hear here. So you just complete, you know, everybody has a different channel, but sometimes somebody blocks the channel. Yeah.
I put my puppy down about 2 weeks ago. Can I connect with him?
Absolutely, yeah. Sometimes my dog comes to me in dreams. And they can come to you in dreams, your cat, your horse, they can come to you in dreams. Have you seen him in dreams or her?
Not yet.
Not yet.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Put a picture of her on your altar. Yeah. No, they can come, and it may be, you know, it might take a little time, but they can definitely be guides for you. Absolutely. Anybody get animals in their dreams? No, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know of one actually a patient of mine who dreamt a dog. I actually dreamt my dog also, before the fact, before I found my most recent dog, you know, that I don't have anymore. I dreamt it, you know, my grandfather said, this is the dog you need to get. And eventually I got it, you know. Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you about, I had this dream, and at the end of the dream, they said the answer is downstairs in the by the laundry. The key is downstairs by the laundry. But now I want to ask you about this white poodle I had in a dream. Okay, so I got this huge dream before my brother died of that he was going off the air soon. He was on the radio, and he was going off the air soon. And
how do you mean going off the air? Is he an
he's
announcer?
a radio person,
Yeah.
and so I saw him on the radio, and I heard him, and I said, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I need to get to him. And I tried to get into this auditorium where he was speaking. It was actually City College of San Francisco, because he was in San Francisco Bay Area where he was a broadcaster. And he's talking, and I'm trying to get to him, and I'm fighting through the crowd to get to him, and I'm getting upset, and there's a woman off to the side that's yelling, help me, help me, help me. And I said, I know. And I'm like, I've got to get to my brother. And nobody's helping. All these people are leaving this auditorium, and I just, why doesn't somebody else? And I turn and I look, and it's a woman. It's actually Katharine Hepburn with a big white poodle with a red ball in its mouth. And I let go of going seeing my brother, and I went to save the dog.
Oh, I mean, it was choking on the ball.
Yeah, and because I knew I could save its life. Because I knew I'm a veterinarian, and I knew what I could do to save its life.
Yeah.
And then, so I didn't get to my brother.
So your brother's dead.
He wound up killing himself.
Well, he's probably earthbound, and you were trying to say to him, you don't know where you are, you don't know what you're talking about. He's probably, suicide is one of the big causes of being earthbound. And, you know, the fact that the poodle got in your way, you know, is a bit that, we were talking about that in the dreams. You know, I wouldn't say that's a lie. It's not your poodle anyway, so it's not telling you to get a white poodle. But it's probably telling you, you know, stay with your core strength, which is your veterinary experience. Don't try and help your brother. You need some expert help to help you. And if you like, we can talk about that afterwards. But he probably needs to be guided back to the light. Suicide is a hard thing because, you know, it's against the cosmic law to take your own life. So it has serious repercussions. There are a couple of movies that you might enjoy. One is Meryl Streep, Defending Your Life. Anybody seen it? Very funny. It's great. It's very true. I mean, that's kind of what happens. But there's another one that speaks to what you're talking about, What Dreams May Come by Robin Williams. Also very, very good dream. Very Hollywood, you know. But there's a lot of truth in those dreams. But if you want, talk to me afterwards about your brother.
Well, I have talked to you, actually, in the past. We've done a tossing. But the dream that came after was the key is downstairs by the laundry, and I was wearing my mother's boots that she wore to his funeral, his memorial. Anyway, I was going to ask you about the key, and the dog stuff came up.
Well, the key to clearing it is to cleaning up the mess, which is, I think, his mess. It has something to do with cleansing, you know, which is kind of what you have to do for him in some way. You won't be able to do it. You need some expert help. Yeah. Anybody else? Somebody else. Yeah, first. Yeah.
What if you're like, sorry, what if you're like a totally different person in your dream? Like, I'm very violent, but I'm not really a violent person in real life, and I can always fly. Like, I can feel like power in my dreams and fly.
Well, flying is common, you know, because that's lucid dreaming, you know, because whatever you can imagine when you're dead in the astral realm, you can do. You want to fly, that's where the Robin Williams movie is very important. What you imagine is what you can have in the astral realm when you're dreaming. So when you're in the astral and you're dreaming, you are in effect, you're lucid. You feel like flying, so you fly. Who else flies in their dreams? Lots of people do. So that's a form of flying, and it means, you know, it's a key to lucid dreaming, because if you can fly, then you can decide where you want to fly to, and then maybe you can go and visit somebody in the dream, and so on. So that's kind of a gift if you can do that. The other one, where you're a violent person and you're not violent, is probably a past life thing. Or maybe it's saying there's some anger in you that needs to be resolved, you know, something like that. Some of the nasty things we see about ourselves are what we used to be way back when. You know, we sort of visit ourselves in past lives and behave in ways we wouldn't behave now. You know, we're purified from that. But it does give you an indication of what maybe you were like, or maybe it's you know, the ancestor is saying there's something that's really, some anger inside of you that needs to be resolved.
I must have been a horrible person in my past life.
No, I mean, I had worse ones than that, don't worry. But you remember when we were way back when, we were not cool. That's why we keep coming back. So don't judge yourself then, judge yourself now, you know. Somebody who hasn't had one, yeah. Oh, well, I pointed to, yeah.
So last night I drank big, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you speak up? I'll repeat it, yeah.
Okay. So my grandma and my aunt that passed away were in my dream last night. And I was driving my car and I bumped into my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yeah, she was parking. And then I saw her, so I came closer, but I was too close, so I scratched her brand new car. But she was not mad, but she said she's waiting for her daughter. And then her daughter showed up, and she showed me the map of the world and state, like kind of the
Outline, a
the
contour
outline
of the state.
of the state.
Outline of what?
A specific state.
State, yeah. American state, yeah.
And then I kept going, and then I saw my grandma, but now I'm not in my car, I'm walking, and I'm trying to help my grandma. So I told her to I put her in like a cart to push her. And she said, no, don't put me in the cart because I'm too heavy, and she was joyful about it. And I said, no, I want to help you. So she sat down and I kept pushing, but then it kind of stopped in a turn. And she said, I told you, and then she started walking. And kind of weird, but yeah.
So your aunt is alive or dead?
Dead.
Well, it's
And
a good.
that's her daughter.
It's a good dream. Now, often they will come to you at a time that's relevant. Like they know you're coming to this talk. So they know you're going to probably ask about it. So they make the effort to come. So do you have an altar? If you don't, you should put both of them on the altar.
I have my grandma.
The grandma too. And it sounds like, you know, the one, there were two, there was the aunt, so those who couldn't help. She saw the aunt and the grandma, and the aunt was, you were driving your car and you scratched the aunt's car, right? So she didn't care. So maybe she's saying she loves you, it's fine. You might have done something in the past that you're worried about, whatever it is, don't worry about it. You know, that it's not a problem. Was there anything, did you metaphorically scratch her car, mess her life or anything at any time, offend her or anything? Well, maybe she thought that you offended her. But I don't know what the map is about. What was the state that it outlined, you know?
Yeah, because when I woke up, and because I thought that it's very strong, so I looked at the map, and Delaware came up.
Delaware.
Yeah,
Did they ever live in Delaware?
and it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, you must work with the word Delaware. It may not be it may not be the state. Work with the word. Maybe look up the origin of Delaware. Google it. Anybody got some ideas about Delaware?
Oh, where?
Delaware, yeah. Be aware, yeah. Be aware they can help you, and you know they love you. Put them on your altar if they're not there already. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a mother that's 96 and she has Alzheimer's and she's in Oregon. She's been passing for about 9 months, but she's not leaving. And I try to dream and contact her a lot. 3 months ago I was up there and I had a really good goodbye with her. But my sister says she's down to 88 pounds and she's just so frail she can't walk anymore. She's bedridden. Is there a way that I can contact her in my dreams? What can I do to reach her? I am clairvoyant. I talk to different family members.
Well, you know, you can do, you know, you can maybe take some of that mugwort again at the back. Anybody who wants to take a piece, you can either make a tea out of it. It's recently picked, but it's, you know, it's been in the packet, so you might want to wash it like you wash your lettuce. You can take a little bit like that, it's completely harmless, and chew it, and then sit on your bed and ask to go to her and what you want to say 3 times, and then you know, be sure that you've chewed while you're asking, you chew the mugwort, or you can make a tea of a leaf, half a cup of boiled water, put it in, steep it, then drink the tea and say the same thing, and see what happens. You might have to do it several times. It may be that she's not receptive to you, so that you might even be there, and you know, you might not even know you're there. Sometimes I'm in places I don't even know. I've been told by somebody I visited. So the fact that you don't remember it doesn't mean you weren't there. The fact they came to you in a dream and you don't remember what they said doesn't mean it's not there and that you'll remember it sometime you hear it again. But you might be confused and not able to receive you. So I wouldn't, you know, you can try your best. That's the best you can do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, when I have really strong dreams, I don't do anything when I have it, but the next morning I'll put it in my phone so I can remember it. So this was one I had about a year ago. Actually, not that long ago. And it's got a lot of detail, but I'll go quickly. I had been to a wedding and taken off my high heels because they hurt. I was sitting with Barbara Fay and Linda Sue, childhood friends, and had a discussion with Linda over her ranch and what she had decided, which was to sell it in 2 years. We started walking back, and it was hurting my feet because I was barefoot. And we heard a big earth-moving machine, went towards the woods to see what was going on. I went back to see if I could find my shoes. An old Native American man called me over and showed me 2 pairs of shoes he had found to see if they were mine. They weren't, and it didn't matter because I knew I would find mine. And then we sat down by an old grave of a Native American, and he used a key that he kept buried nearby and opened the sandstone covering that revealed the next layer. He told me the next time I came to visit that I could use the key to open it and pay my respects. He told me he had not been drinking for 2 years. He began to leave, but I stopped him and hugged him tenderly and asked him to forgive me for all we had done his people. And he quietly held me in his arms and said, I forgive you.
Nice dream. Yeah. You know, that's where I think, you know, there's a thing about truth and lies, you know. Your friend and all that, it may be relevant. I mean, is she going to sell a ranch or whatever? I don't think it's relevant. But that means you've got some Native American ancestors or Native Americans who love you. Where are you from?
Texas.
Texas. And, you know, you probably maybe been a Native American in a previous life. You know, I've been black 3 times, so, you know, we cycle in and out of different things. So you should, if you can draw, try, even if you can't draw, try and draw what you saw, put it on your altar, and take the key, ask him to come and help you with dreams and guide you. And you stopped drinking, so that's good.
You know, one time when I was in the Pacific Northwest at a museum that had paintings and drawings and photographs of Native Americans, there was one, that's not my heritage, but there was one of them, a Native American woman who was quite old, and I looked at her and I felt like she was my ancestor.
It might have been. It's interesting that the Buddhists say you should look at everybody as if they were your mother, because they might have been in a past life. And then you'll treat everybody as if they were your mother. So maybe she was your mother. You know, there's that deja vu thing you're talking about where it may not be your mother, but it's somebody. You know, like sometimes we hook up with people who we really feel, often in a relationship, we feel, you know, there's something there from before. And there is, but, you know, it doesn't matter. You don't have to know about it. I don't think it's fruitful to go and do a past life regeneration. What's it going to help you, you know? The main thing is to acknowledge them as a guide and start speaking to them and have a container for them and an altar and so on. And your aunts, your Native American, the other one's probably dead now. Maybe she's connected in some way. I mean, we don't know how it works, but it's totally magical. And it works, but it doesn't work like in neon lights. They don't come to you with a message, you know, you must do this, you know. It's very subtle. You've got to look for little messages in between. And people often don't have the patience for either the altar or to listen to the messages. And that's where the trick comes in. Any others? Yeah, sorry. Ignoring you for a long time.
Most of my questions have been answered.
Good.
So I'm glad we all have the same questions. The only question I have is for people who get blocked, is there a ritual, a medicine plan, prayer, meditation that can unblock people?
You have to be in the moment with it. So, you know, the thing is that if you blocked, what work do you do?
But for whatever reason, big change in my life has given me a lot of the gifts. I get visitation, but for other people, messages. I have a friend who tries really hard. She wants to talk to her father. We went to see Caputo. Of course, she wasn't selected. She prays, she meditates, and she gets no messages. And then 3 nights ago, he came to me. At his silhouette, he told me what needed to be done. It wasn't talking, it's just mostly like pictures, visions, and stuff. I got the message to her. It didn't mean much to me. Yeah. And yeah, she got the message. It helped her.
Does this happen a lot to you?
Yeah, I do get a lot of visitations, but my friend who really wants this seems like she's blocked. She doesn't understand.
Well, you're not blocked. You know, they don't come every night. They come when they need to. They can't come just to hang out. They're not allowed to do that. They have to have a reason to come. Like they can come on a special occasion. So, yeah, I would not, you're not blocked by this. What's your heritage?
Hispanic.
Spanish.
Spanish.
Yeah. So, you know,
I just wish I could help her. She carries his ashes on her necklace because she really needs to know he's okay. And I'm not like Caputo that can say anything. I can't communicate. They just bring me the message and then.
Well, it sounds like they're okay, so you can reassure them. You can reassure them.
But there's nothing I can do for her, so the messages can go to her, right?
Yeah, it's up to her. What you can do is pass the message on and reassure her. So that's your job. Yeah, that's great. Anybody else? Yeah.
People that are in the spiritual realms and spirit realms.
Sorry, say again.
I'm a dental hygienist.
Yeah.
And I feel like I must have a spirit guide or spirit guides that show me areas that need to be diagnosed.
Yeah.
And I've talked to other health practitioners and they felt the same way. And so is that something that is helping their karma to help people that are?
Yes, it helps you and it helps them. And that's why you also need an altar. You know, it happens to a lot of people who are doing service work, especially massage workers.
Yeah,
Acupuncturists, massage workers, psychotherapists. Many of them don't actually know why it happens. You know, they don't understand it, and they can make it stronger by what we've talked about. But the best massage workers aren't the ones who've done the most workshops. They're just the people who know what to do because they're reading you. So, yeah, that's the same thing we're talking about. It comes in the day, it comes in the night. But, you know, the thing is you can make it grow and get bigger by acknowledging it, by showing gratitude. And yes, you can help them by letting them do work from the other side and giving them love and gratitude. So, yeah, absolutely. So a lot of you can do those things. Yeah.
A question related to how parents can be healers and guides for their children. Is there anything specific that you would advise for a parent as far as going into dreams and asking for guidance, especially with, I have 2 special needs grandchildren that I'm raising, and I think I try to be really careful about interfering with their journey, and I feel like there's a balance I need to find.
How old are they?
11 and 9.
You're allowed to interfere because they're minors. You can't interfere if they're adults. But you're the caregiver, you grandma, you're allowed to interfere with it. No, you can ask for dreams on their behalf. You know, again, use all the tools from today and start afresh. You know, and yeah, when you know your guides, especially they're connected to the same bloodline, so they'll want to help you in any way they can. Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance? Yes. Just stand up and say loud.
I've also often taken a position in the dream world that I don't have the dream has me.
Sorry, just say again.
That I've taken the position in the dream, when doing dreams, that I don't have the dream has me.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm invited into a dream. And one example would be like one time I dreamt of a black cat with green eyes that told me it was going to come live with me. And I noted that, I forgot about it. 6 months later, I opened the door and there's a cat, a black cat with green eyes, sitting there meowing. And that cat came out moving and lived with me. You know. Also, with clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, oftentimes it comes in as a dream. It comes in as an invitation into that world, into another realm. One time I actually had a visitation by my grandparents. I was born in their house, and they appeared in front of me as real as anybody in this room. But what came through so profoundly was their heart, the love. It was so profound, I broke down and wept and wept and wept and wept. The love there, I didn't know was possible. Absolutely unconditional. And I think that was also probably connected to the cat.
Yeah, they sent you the cat.
What's that?
They sent you the cat.
Yeah. And then one thing I really want to bring up, I used to have this recurring dream. You talk about the serpents, and I always dreamt of this, in my dream, a serpent that was very large. I put my hand on it, and I was always protecting the serpent. People were trying to kill the serpent. And I was always helping it move and relocate in the dreams. Sometimes I had to cross the bridge, sometimes barbers with some pitchforks, from this one era were trying to kill the serpent, and I would always help it remove and protect it.
that's important because you want to protect your snake and other people's, the work you're doing will help other people maybe nurture their snake. The snake is a very powerful, I think I'll end off with this and we can have time for meditation, but the snake is a very powerful symbol for spirituality. The shedding of the skin, the renewing yourself, becoming born again, and not only that, but in the African context is the warning part of the snake. Yours is a good snake, but sometimes the snakes are not cool, and that usually is the flip side of everything. So it's time up, but those of you who want to stay can stay for the meditation. Those who don't need to leave can leave. And this meditation is just going to really reinforce what we've been talking about. This is important, just this staying of Kierkegaard is very dangerous to go into eternity with possibilities which one has himself prevented from becoming realities. A possibility is a hint from God, one must follow it. So the ancestors are the intermediaries between us and the Creator. They're there to help. So when they give us information, they're trying to help us with our karma. They are our app, if you like, in a way disrespectfully, to our destiny. So these are the words, I'll let you read them, of the song. And it's also a summary of what we've talked about at this time. I'll just play it a little bigger. Give you a chance to read it. And this is the rest of it. So you can just sit up straight and take some deep breaths in and out. Breathe in as white light, everything you want to bring in from the talk. Breathe in your ancestors, breathe in your guides, breathe in your pets that have passed, your friends that may have passed that you loved, or some of your teachers. You'd be surprised that they also loved you. And then breathe out thick black smoke, all the things getting in the way of your dreams, things you want to get rid of, monkey mind, narrow mind, ego, fear. Breathe in your altar and any tool that you want to use for helping you. And you can either follow the dreams, the dream message in the song, or you can just meditate or do what you want to do. Take full breaths in and out.
Call us, oh, we gentle, you leave this plane. Talk to us and let us know. Some will think you're insane. Never mind, just let them go. We are there waiting beyond, where there is no time. When you pass, you'll still be here to help guide you along. Remember us, remember, please do not forget. You may not feel or hear our answer, so do not be upset. You may not hear or feel our answer, so have no regret. La 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 la
And slowly come back to yourself. Breathing, come back to normal and open your eyes. So 18th of April, we're going to talk about spiritual power of music. Thanks for coming. Cold outside, but it looks like the sun's out. Okay.